It's so interesting.
It's so interesting.
It's so interesting.
It's interesting. It's so interesting.
Okay. Welcome to It's So Interesting, where people talk about their work and life experience. I am George Spitzer. Today I'm talking with Gordon Rogers, an electronic and optical mathematician, inventor, and hydrologist. What is your prognosis for civilization based on our most basic element of water?
Civilization is fragile and has come and gone in many manifestations over the history. Water has historically been the demise, or the lack of water has been the demise of many cultures. Too many to count, many that we haven't even identified yet. From the Maya, the Egyptian, the Old Kingdom, Egypt, and in North America. We've had the complete loss of cultures just due to the lack of, or the change of availability of water. And clearly when the population grows, the requirement for the amount of water changes dramatically. If you double your population, you can, and especially if you consider waste of water, they get good at it, and then it seems like they can take it for granted, and that's not necessarily a good idea.
There's 3/4 of the ocean, which is saline. Right?
3/4 of the planet's surface.
The surface is saline,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And when you actually talk about the volume of water, it's actually more.
Water all around, and not a drop to drink.
Exactly. You are working on projects where that drop to drink can be drunk.
Yes.
Through desalinization. There are nations that are in great need of water, particularly in the desert belt in the Middle East, parts of India, Asia, where they don't exactly have billions of dollars to blow on equipment to come up with a few drops of water. So are you involved in any programs to make it more available to people?
That would certainly be a primary aspiration. I mean, that's what we're trying to do. My effort is really associated with using available energy to make fresh water that adds to the water supply. I prefer to see rivers be natural. Don't go in and dam the river. Don't take the water to, divert it to Los Angeles or wherever the local, if you can avoid it. I mean, obviously those people are going to die in about 3 days if they don't have water. And I've seen some pretty pessimistic models that certain parts of that water system, that water flow change, and it can be fairly serious. But certainly I would prefer to add to the water supply, yes. Cities, like people, have to have water on a regular basis. It's not something that you can, well, we don't need any for a week. No, this won't work. And as such, they are compelled at a survival level to enhance their ability to obtain water. If energy were not a limiting constraint, just a simple constraint, water wouldn't be that big an issue. You could make water from the ocean easily as long as you've got an adequate energy supply. I mean, you just boil the water off and it's there. And so we've got plenty of the water. The real constraint is energy. And that's one of the reasons why I think the solar energy approach that we've taken is significant. I mean, that's why it could mean something to humanity as a whole.
So you're looking at solar energy for the purposes of producing power to desalinize seawater.
Well, no, you don't have to go as an interim step. You go straight from solar energy to direct conversion to water, fresh water. You basically are pulling off that water, using that energy. There's an energy balance. This is thermodynamics, and I don't want to go into the complexities of the thermodynamics, but
It's mathematically based, I'm sure.
yes, yeah. And the energy balances are actually very interesting, depending on how you do it. It's not that much energy to take out the water, or at least some small fraction of the water in the ocean. Now, you've got to do it delicately, is because the environmental impact is non-zero. I mean, you're interacting with the environment, so you don't have any choice about having some impact. Now, the question is, what kind of impact on the environment? The impact on the environment is one of the critical things. Our model of that energy, the electrodynamic models of how photons act, are only a small part of the whole system that operates. The politics of water go back thousands of years. The word river is from the word rival. Most people don't recognize it, but it's always been a conflict subject. And to me, that's one of the things that you have to notice as a species. I mean, water's been on the tip of poets' tongues, and sun has been on the tip of poets' tongues for thousands of years. To me, the Greek poet Aeschylus saying that only barbarians don't orient their homes with respect to the sun, or Mark Twain's whiskey's for drinking and water's for fighting over. It's not like we haven't already been exposed to the concept of water as being something of dire consequence to be without, and something that's of continuous need. Something you can't get away from its use for any time at all.
Okay, now we've established the challenges of rivals, rivers. What do you perceive, or what are the things that you are doing that's going to provide a solution quickly?
Well, finding an ample supply of energy so that you can convert adequate supplies of water, and adequate being a variable, depends on the location and the time of year, and any of 100 parameters affect the demand level. Dwell on that too much, but I think it's pretty obvious.
I acknowledge that. So we know about the dire consequences
Right.
side. My question is, what are you doing about it?
By making it possible to use an easily available, ample energy supply elegantly to provide that water is the real mission. And that's really what we've done. Being able to implement it on a grand scale so that it really impacts the availability of water on a global scale, on a world scale, that's a big undertaking. This is not a minor industrial project. Some of these installations would be miles across. So you do anticipate, well, pretty major constructions here. These are not minor projects.
What is your model in your mind, or are you still in the theoretical stage?
Most major urban areas have areas in their vicinity that are not high demanding. The island of Manhattan, you pointed out, is very valuable dirt. You can't put the generating source right there necessarily. So it probably will involve transport, of course. But it's not the transport, it's the availability. You've got to have it to move it. To me, the generation of the material is the critical aspect. And those things take operations of scale.
On the governmental magnitude, or a major corporation, or a joint venture?
Clearly governmental, major organization. Joint ventures, the politics of water and water rights are huge. They have the complexity of water rights is enormous. If you check the political environment, as a kid when I saw the Colorado River is basically a small stream, I could skip a rock across it. That's something that really hit me deep in my heart. Flying over the California-Mexican border and looking down and seeing south of the border, it was absolutely desert. And right at the borderline, you could see the borderline is green. And that was actually one of the things that inspired me to go, we should be able to solve this. I mean, not that you can solve anything and everything, but it looked like it was something that was plenty of energy there. It was clear that it was pretty hot. The sun is bright here, so it was clear to me that you had to, or it would be a good thing to use solar energy. That took years to actually come up with a system that would actually do it on a small scale.
What is that system?
We developed a cellular approach, so it's scalable. You can have 1 cell or 1,000 cells or 1,000,000 cells, and they contribute to the flow of first a small amount of water, and in number, they can produce enormous amounts of water. And it's recyclable, and the energy source is renewable. So to me, that was something that we really should at least look at. It is feasible or it isn't on a unit cost of how much water it produces, and whether or not it's practical or feasible is dependent on the condition. Middle of a rainstorm, you don't need to pick it up that way. That's great, fantastic. Problem is over the last 1,000 years, about 60% of it or so has been drought. The history of drought in this country and the world is amazing.
Being that you are an inventor on a macro scale with inventions based on mathematics, or high mathematics I would call it, is there an invention that there seems to be a need to be invented that you wish could be invented, and do you think you could do it?
That would answer the water question?
Yeah.
I think we have at a certain level and made that invention. We do have the set of discoveries and the set of analyses that go together to form a system that is energy conservative and does produce water. We've already done that. That's not a future thing. Yes, we can and have, I hope. I mean, we have to go out and prove it at scale, and you still have to show economies, and I think the economies of scale are critical. Whether or not it's applicable in any given area is dependent on that area and that time. I mean, if it's raining right now. I'm thrilled that it's raining. I'm so glad that it's raining because I'm not ready to produce it at that scale right now. However, I do anticipate that there will be another drought. Exactly when? Well, my first guess is about 11 years, and they can go on for various lengths. If you miss like a cycle of water injection into a system, that's when there are problems.
Before I move on to the next general area of questions, are you optimistic that this world freshwater shortage that is either upon us or is going to get a lot worse is going to be resolved?
I think it can only be resolved locally and temporarily. That's one of the things about water. Do I think we'll be able to have a better handle on it locally? Yeah, I think so, because you can have large organizations that come in and come to the rescue in a very real sense. The big questions are, can they bring in enough, fast enough, and not have ramifications that were, byproducts, side effects, that so their solution is worse than the disease. The cure is worse than the disease. So I don't think it's that we're going to ever get it all, but I think we can get better. And so that's one of the things that I would work to.
Do you have any inventions that you've already invented and patented that are part of this increasing the supply of water, or equipment that can provide?
Yes, there are patents pending right now on one of the systems.
Okay. You can't give out all the secrets, but can you give a general description of what it is? Is it bigger than a bread box?
Well, actually, the scale is to some degree variable. You can make fairly small ones to within the constraint of how well you filter the incoming water. Bigger ones don't need as good a filtering. You get good flow if the water is really pretty clean with just salt in it. You can make very small cells, and it is a cellular approach. I know it's solar thermal, so there are optics internal to the system, but you're basically using the water temperature difference to cause condensation kind of on itself. It's a feedback loop. It's using the heat of the system to heat the incoming water, and using the cold water to capture the incoming cold water to capture the fresh effluent.
So again, I'm trying to visualize that. I'm getting the concept here. Is this a bread box? Is this as big as a table? Is it, when you say a cell, I'm familiar with fuel cells and solar cells. You're talking of water cells.
Yes.
All right. Where are they? Is it in a machine, or is it laying around somewhere, or on
Yes,
a farm?
you could put it anywhere. You could put it on a roof of any hotel complex or anything like that. Or you could have a major field of them, for lack of a better term. But individually, what you're looking for is maximum energy efficiency to liberate the water. There's this energy balance between the salt water and the fresh water, and all you're doing is shifting the energy point. You're using the cold water to force the condensation, because the core temperatures of the cells get quite high. You want to approach the boiling point. Obviously, we know that there's kind of a maximum that water gets to as far as the temperature is concerned. It just goes to the boiling point. It doesn't get any hotter. So if you can approach that point and then have cold water coming in and have a surface that allows the condensation of that steam right on the incoming cold water, first you're warming that incoming cold water, and second, you're forcing the condensation where you want it. And that's exactly what you have to do, is put the water where you want it. Put the energy where it's supposed to be, and that allows you to separate the water.
This is all optical, photovoltaic?
No photovoltaic. It's an energy transfer to the water bodies. You're creating two separated water bodies. One of them's salt, one of them's fresh. And it's chemistry, so there's stoichiometry and all kinds of funny things here. When you mix salt with water, it gives up a bunch of energy. That's why it takes a bunch of energy to take that water back out, because water follows salt, salt follows water. That's why salt just attracts water.
I have these images of these cells that you're describing being able to convert essentially seawater to water through the energy that's already in it.
With the sun's energy.
Yeah, with the sun's energy. That's the
Right.
added agent. And then it gets piped off, tubed off, or whatever, collected and delivered to where it's needed. In terms of ordinary people like myself, all I do is I use water out of the tap for cooking and cleaning and washing. And then there's industrial water. It's used for industrial processes. Then there's water used for farming. Then there's water used for watering a lawn. Then there's water used for fountains. On the scale of things, where's the big Megillah? Where's the elephant in the room?
The presumption that we're entitled to it. That's the sketchy part. The assumption that sure, we can always turn on that tap and water's just going to flow out. Well, last year, about 18 months ago, somewhere in the not too distant past, the water, my city water, for 3 days was shut off. This is a real eye-opening experience. People don't really get it, that, gosh, that entitlement is not necessarily a guarantee.
Thank you for being here, Gordon. I've been speaking with Gordon Rogers, an electronic and optical mathematician, inventor, and hydrologist. If you would like to contact Gordon, or to listen again to this show or to any other show, go to itssointeresting.com.
It's so interesting.
It's so interesting.
So
It's so
interesting.
It's interesting.